Good evening. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October 14th, 2019 Council Work Session. And before we get into our official agenda items, our first item is committee reports and items of interest. Do I have any councilors who have pieces they want to share with the public or with each other? Betty.
A few things, yes. Lane Regional Air Protection Agency just got a big grant to clean up the air in Oak Ridge. It's always been a problem. And it's almost $5 million. It's actually $4,938,190. Anyway, it's almost $5 million.
Wow.
And LRAPA will be administering it, and using it for things like replacing wood stoves with better wood stoves, and replacing green wood with cured wood, and building wood sheds and all sorts of things. But that's good news. On the other hand, LRAPA has had many complaints lately about Seneca and what's the other one? Baxter, yeah. Mm-hmm. Baxter, many complaints. And that's revival. There were a lot a few years ago, and then they died out, and now there are a lot more. I've been hearing a lot about e-scooters, and I'm concerned too. I think they're hazardous. I encountered them in Portland on the sidewalks, running in and out among people. Among pedestrians. And I'm also concerned the fact that the staff has gone pretty far toward starting a program of e-scooters without discussing it with council. I think Airbnbs, I think action is urgent. I heard that some people are buying houses just for that purpose. And I heard it from what I think was a credible person, that people are buying houses just to use for Airbnbs. And I think it's urgent that we do something soon instead of waiting. I'm appalled that the governor has offered $40 million to the Olympic trials when we don't have any money for mental health institutions. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I have just a quick piece. Mayor Lundberg and I sort of co-hosted an emergency preparedness summit on September 12th, which I then was not able to attend because I was tending to my mother. But there was a really good response to that of mayors attending and realizing they had more work to do. And then we had on Friday morning a half-day workshop with Dr. Lucy Jones, who comes from Caltech and has been working on the resiliency plan for Los Angeles, and again brought emergency preparedness managers and elected officials together to talk about what we know, what we don't know, what we need to do. And there will be a follow-up meeting of that on November 1st. So I just want to put that out there, that this work is really, we're trying to really integrate, using the same language, understanding what we have to work on in order to prepare, learning from these, snowstorms and ice storms and other things that are happening, but building towards being really prepared for a Cascadia event and recognizing what we can do as jurisdictions to work together. So it's, I think, very promising and very exciting and hopeful. And just wanted that to be on your radar, that work is happening, and that workshop will happen again on November 1st. So, all right, any other pieces? Okay, thank you. We're ready for our first item, which is the Human Rights Commission work plan.
Good evening, Mayor, Venus, and City Councilors. My name is Fabio Andrade. I work as a human rights and equity analyst in the Office of Human Rights and Neighborhood Involvement. I'm here tonight with Joel Wiboa, the chair of the Human Rights Commission, and we are going to present a report on the activities the Commission did in 2019 and our proposed work plan for 2020. As you know, boards and commissions at the City of Eugene play a critical role in contributing to a vibrant community. I want to express our gratitude to the community members who served in the HRC in 2019, especially Arya Seligman, Julia Johnson, and Amy Walsh. Their terms ended in June, so they left the commission. You appointed Daniel Borson, Amanda McCluskey, and Kirsten London to replace them. And these new commissioners joined the continuing one in our retreat in August. So Jen van der Hagen and I support the commission in preparing the work plan that has been included in your meeting packet. This year, the HRC hopes to improve its work as an advisory role to City Council and to find more opportunities to collaborate in implementing the work plan and also in advancing human rights in our city. Joel will walk you through the report and then through the work plan, and we look forward to answering your questions and discussing any opportunities for us, for the Commission to help Council advance its goals.
Thank you, Fabio. Good afternoon, Mayor Venice, City Councilors. My name is Joel Bois. I currently chair the Human Rights Commission for the City of Eugene. I just want to highlight a couple of things from the 2019 work plan. First, we were really successful over the summer in passing a declaration condemning white nationalism and white supremacy. We're very proud of that. We hope you are as well. The WeCU group hosted the International Human Rights Day celebration at Churchill High School, which was really successful. We had folks from all across the community come that day. And we had an ability and an opportunity to engage marginalized communities in the city. So I had a lot of fun at the event. Mayor Venice was there as well. And also the homelessness and poverty work group organized events to increase awareness and also to try to come up with solutions to our unhoused population issue. I'd also like to quickly point out some specific items on the 2020 work plan for the Human Rights Commission in an effort to be realistic about what we can accomplish since we are all volunteers on this board. We proposed 3 topic areas in which we would like to focus on in 2020. The first of which is to increase our engagement with community. Oftentimes we meet downtown once a month, in which we discuss a variety of topics and issues, and then sometimes we come to you and propose solutions or at least try to bring up the topic. We would really like for us to endorse, organize, and participate in more events throughout the community, whether it be at the University of Oregon or in the variety of neighborhoods across the city. We really would like commissioners to go out and represent the HRC in a broader capacity. The second thing is our liaison role to council and also to other groups. We would like to propose a joint work session with council on a particular topic sometime in 2020. We also have been really diligent and very focused on strengthening relationships with other advisory bodies. Specifically, the Sustainability Commission, we worked on with them on Envision Eugene a number of years ago, and we've kept in close contact as other issues arise. We also currently have a dedicated seat on the Police Commission. I served on that seat last year, and it was very eye-opening. I had a wonderful time serving on that specific board last year and had great conversations with other police commissioners as well as Chief Skinner. So we'd like to continue that relationship. But we also know there's some other roles and other areas in which other advisory bodies would like to communicate with us. Sustainability Commission would like to strengthen the relationship with us. Police Commission would like to think more about how they can also send someone to us instead of us just sending ourselves to them. And we'd also like to strengthen our relationship with the Neighborhood Leadership Council. So we know they meet on a once-a-month basis. I myself have made an effort over the last year to try to go to some of the neighborhood meetings and hear about some of the issues they're experiencing. So we'd like to continue to do that and to make sure it's a little more seamless and we're not making more work for ourselves and for the other advisory bodies. And then finally, we'd also like to increase our advisory role to city staff. So we hope to bring more recommendations on human rights issues to staff and also to city council, especially as it relates to housing, possibly making the houseless community a protected class, updating our response plan to hate and bias activity, and analyzing proposed budgets to identify priorities in order to support human rights solutions in the city. So really, I think over the last 3 or 4 years, geez, I've been on the HRC 3 years now, when I just got reappointed, but what I've seen us is we've really elevated ourselves to the next level, I believe, as an advisory body. And so we're ready to take that next leap and making sure that human rights issues are being addressed and solutions are being provided to yourself and to the residents of Eugene.
Thank you. Thank you. Any counselors want to raise a hand? And Claire?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the report. It was great to kind of see the recap of all the accomplishments of the Human Rights Commission over the last year. And I like what you're forecasting for your work going forward. I do question my understanding that the Neighborhood Leadership Council is not actually a chartered body of the City of Eugene. Is that correct?
Correct.
City Manager, can you confirm that? Yeah, so I appreciate you wanting to reach out to the neighborhoods. I guess I would feel more comfortable if you focused on the actual neighborhood associations themselves rather than going through the Leadership Council. Because it is not a formally chartered committee of the city. My understanding is the neighborhood, some of the chairs formed that group, and you know they have meetings, they have opinions. But you know, you and I were at the Whitaker Community Council meeting the other day, and for me, that's really where the insight is and the work is, and I understand there's a lot of neighborhood groups, and so that in terms of you're trying to be efficient in how you reach the neighborhood groups, but that would just be my one small criticism of that plan, is to maybe rethink how you actually reach to the various neighborhood associations at their meetings in a way that works for your commission, which I understand, just like the neighborhood community organizations, is all volunteer, and so you know it's more time out of your evening to go to those meetings. But I think could really reap some really good benefits by attending some of those meetings, and then maybe being strategic about how you kind of roll that out, so you're not feeling like you're taking on more than can be accomplished.
Thank you.
Okay. Emily?
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and thank you for all the work that the Human Rights Commission does all year long, which I get to know about, being their liaison. I really thank the commission for their recommendations when we get applications for new members. You know, not everybody's on the commission, and even being on it, I really appreciate your insights into places that we might need to fill, and how you just like the makeup of the commission. So thank you for that. I was wondering if you could talk just a little bit about some of the things that you did last year that are under continuous work, such as, let's see, the housing and homeless one, monitor, advise, and advocate for how city should respond, for human rights, and expansion of shelter and other options. I mean, we all want those. And then up in education, awareness and outreach, all of these are continuous work, which I believe and know, but I think it would be helpful for the community to hear some of the things that are part of continuous work.
Yes, the first one you mentioned is the homelessness and poverty work group, and that group was meeting twice a month. And we work with them to bring some staff who will work on homeless issues to present what the city was doing, and also to hear from that group. And that group includes people who are unhoused themselves. So it's very valuable for our staff to hear that information from people who are experiencing homelessness. And they organized several movie showings last year to increase awareness about the issue. And the monitoring of what's going on, these work groups, they help us connect with certain communities that are not directly representing the Human Rights Commission, and they also support our efforts to increase reporting. So because they are out in the community, they are knowing what's going on. Every time one of these members in the Human Rights Commission or in one of the work groups hear about something that is happening in the community, they try to connect those victims with us so we can try to support them.
I think this is really critical work, and the work groups do a lot of work. I mean, I see the commission and the commissioners are on different groups, and then more people come forward to help. I just think that not enough people know what the commission does, and so as you're doing outreach and education, you know, talk yourselves up a little bit, because you put in a lot of work. This is often the number one concern of residents. So I'm just encouraging all of the commission to continue the work. I think it's really important for us to have the insights of our homeless, unsheltered, and other marginalized communities. Because of their position, they often don't get a chance to speak. So the Human Rights Commission is essential in that communication link. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the multicultural liaison position. And then there was also mention of a marginalized communities liaison. Do we have two, or are those the same?
It's the same.
Okay, great. I thought that, but I was like, ooh, are we getting even more? So that's great. Thanks so much.
Any other counselors want to say? Alan?
Yeah, thanks for your work on this, and thanks to everybody that's been on the Human Rights Commission and all the folks that just left. And I think your work plan's a good one. I think it hits the right tones. I too am looking forward to the multicultural liaison position getting filled and seeing what we can do with that. I think that's going to be an important part for you guys to weigh in on. And I'd just like to underscore something that Claire said, which is that the Neighborhood Leadership Council is not part of the city apparatus. It's a separate, completely distinct thing, and they chose to do that, not us. So if you're going to outreach into the communities and into the neighborhoods, go to the neighborhood associations that are actually affiliated with the cities. I know that's a lot more work, and I know other boards and commissions that I've been liaison to, Sustainability Commission and the Police Commission and other ones have gone to the actual neighborhood association, so I think that's an important part of your work plan going forward. But overall, I think it's really good. I like it.
Okay, thank you. Any other counselors? So I just want to chime in. I also really want to applaud the work that the Human Rights Commission does, which is on several fronts challenging work, and we rely on you to kind of build that sense of constructive action, to advise council on that action, and you've done that year after year, so I appreciate that. And I also feel that we, we're beginning to build towards this 2021 recognizing cultures within our community, and the multicultural liaison is part of that, and it is an opportunity, again, for the work of the commission to really be kind of in a center stage. And as you're thinking about outreach, one of the ways we're looking at that cultural outreach is to really shine a light on the activities of the communities within our community, not necessarily create new, different activities, but to really highlight and promote the activities that are already there. So that, again, I think offers an opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to really sort of coordinate with us in terms of how we're reaching out to those communities and how we're highlighting an opportunity for you to connect. So thank you very much for the work that you do and this report, which is valuable to us. Oh, yes, we need a motion. Oh.
I move to approve the Human Rights Commission FY 2020 work plan.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Am I not counting? Are we missing someone? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Jennifer, right. That's why I only came up with 7. Thank you. It passes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We did, in fact, see 7 hands.
In fact, see, I saw 7 hands. I thought, wait a second. Okay, thank you. And next up, we are talking about, I have to close the city council meeting and open a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency.
We get some bonus time tonight. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Denny Bro, Planning and Development.
Don't have to film.
So we're here this evening to do something that we kind of have tabbed the Urban Renewal Big Look. Typically, we would be here talking about a specific project within a specific urban renewal district, but today what we really want to do is kind of a high-level update on several items that will be coming back to you over the next several months, and there's quite a few. Most of the upcoming discussions are centered around two really exciting catalytic projects. It's our Town Square project, which is within the Downtown Urban Renewal District, and the Riverfront Redevelopment Project, which of course is in our Riverfront District. But there's also some other items intermingled in those as well that will be coming to you in the future. Each of these will be coming back to you in much more detail with more in-depth discussions and information and so forth. But because the projects and the project funding are so interconnected, we thought it'd be really valuable to kind of do this big look ahead of time so that you can kind of understand the context as we move forward. There's also some funding limitations in the two urban renewal districts, so as you're making decisions and having discussions about funding projects in both districts, we thought it'd be really important to kind of step back and see how all of these kind of interconnect together so that you can have more informed discussions as we go forward as well. We're not really looking for any decisions tonight. What we really want to do is kind of give you this high-level overview, give you a little bit of detail and tell you what's coming, and try to answer, not really answer questions, but gather the questions that you will have on each one of these, and maybe more importantly, get a sense of what other information you will want as we go into each one of these discussions, because as you'll see, there's quite a few. So I'm going to ask Michael to kind of give an overview, and then we can open it up for any of your questions or information that you might see as we go forward. So.
Thanks, Denny. Okay. I'm Michael Kennison with the Community Development Division. Good evening. The first slide is simply to orient us to the two districts and remind us what the boundaries are. Starting to the west, that gray boundary represents the Downtown Urban Renewal District and roughly coincides with the downtown planned boundary. And you can see a number of symbols there that represent locations of the various projects that we'll touch on this evening. And then to the east, adjacent to and to the east, stretching all along Franklin Boulevard all the way to the I-5 corridor is the Riverfront Urban Renewal District boundary. And the projects thus far have been focused on the north there. You can see a number of different color-shaped polygons, and those are the different projects that we'll talk on, all associated with the downtown Riverfront development on property formerly owned by eWeb. So specifically tonight, the Riverfront projects that we'll give a little bit of an overview on are related to infrastructure and contingency planning, the quiet zones, affordable housing, a park plaza, and the steam plant. And then you'll notice at the bottom there, we have a number of conversations coming up with council and the agency related to Riverfront. And so we're just flagging those dates for you. There will probably be more, and we'll review a timeline of these at the end of today's presentation. Related to the Downtown Urban Renewal District, we have Town Square, 1059 Willamette, formerly known as the LCC Downtown Center, Kesey Square, Downtown Wayfinding, and the high-speed fiber or UGNet project. And again, there's at least one date calendar now related to the Town Square and a fiber update, but we're anticipating more related to Town Square in November and December, pending the outcomes of the 30th. So we're going to start with the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, and this image should be familiar to you now. It's the a newly revised concept plan for the downtown riverfront. And we're going to start talking about infrastructure. So if you recall, the city is constructing all the infrastructure, the streets and the utilities to serve the riverfront park and the redevelopment area. This is going to be funded primarily through a local improvement district, which will be a cost share between the agency and the owners of the property. Current estimates are about $16.2 million, but we won't know the actual costs until we go out to bid in the spring of 2020. If the bids exceed the current estimate, Williams & Dame could choose not to proceed with purchase of the property. So we're planning for that contingency. So we want to be able to construct the minimum infrastructure needed to serve the riverfront park with or without a development partner. More information on options, on those options will be presented at an October 28th work session. The steam plant. The steam plant's vision is to adaptively reuse the historic building as a vibrant mixed-use gathering place for art, culture, and innovation. It's an ambitious project that faces extraordinary environmental, seismic, and financial challenges. In April, the agency board directed staff to negotiate deal points with the steam plant development team. Those conversations have been going well, and we are refining those items related to potential public investments to support the project's success. River Guides will review those draft deal points in October, and then we'll be here to present to the agency board at a work session on November 18th. The quiet zones. In 2017, council approved quiet zone improvements at 10 railroad crossings across the city. Riverfront urban renewal funds were approved for 3 crossings in the district at 8th and Hilliard, 5th and High, and Pearl Street. We're currently in the design phase, and we've sent preliminary plans to Union Pacific for their review. Escalating construction costs over time and some necessary design modifications have resulted in increased costs over initial estimates. Staff will provide more details on recommended funding strategies for the 3 riverfront crossings at the October 28th work session. Affordable housing. Williams & Dame have teamed with Bridge Housing to develop and manage an affordable housing project as part of the riverfront development, with no less than 75 units targeting households at or below 60% of area median income. Current plans would have Bridge partner with a local provider to manage on-site resident services. The recent concept plan revisions approved by the agency board relocated the site to the block north of the planned 5th Avenue extension and noted in the yellow circle on the slide. Like similar affordable housing projects, we anticipate a mix of incentives being needed to close the funding gap for this project. It's still in very early conceptual stages, and staff will continue to update council as we learn more about the financial needs and the potential sources to support it. The Riverfront Park Plaza. The plaza is in the heart of the downtown riverfront and will provide an acre of urban park amenities and a place for our community to gather and celebrate on the river. In April, the agency board approved initial funding for the plaza that will be sufficient for completing a design, but additional funds will be needed to actually construct it with the types of amenities envisioned by the community. We anticipate this project being competitive for grant funding and attractive to private donors, but additional public investment may be needed to complete the project. We have begun meeting with Williams & Dame to discuss the overall program and vision for the plaza, and we'll be back on your agenda sometime in 2020 once we are further along in the design process. Moving on to the downtown urban renewal district and the town square. The town square concept design process has had broad community input that establishes a comprehensive vision for the park blocks, farmers market, and city hall that increases the square's accessibility, safety, and functionality. The process has produced a design that not only meets the needs of our 2 signature markets, but is welcoming and inclusive to visitors and the broader community alike. Now that we've completed the concept design phase, we have begun assembling a development team and are at a point of moving from concept towards implementation. Staff will present a design for review and feedback and discuss next steps at the October 30th work session. Downtown wayfinding. The downtown wayfinding project will provide consistent and clear information and signage to assist the public to navigate their way to destinations throughout the downtown. Implementation started this fiscal year with resources from the general fund, the parking fund, and a small amount of riverfront urban renewal. Additional funds need to be secured to meet the project completion target of June 2020, and downtown urban renewal funds have been identified as a potential source. (1059) Willamette, formerly known as Lane Community College's Downtown Center, is currently vacant and identified as a redevelopment opportunity in the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan. The historic photo in the lower left-hand corner there shows you what the building looked like, and I'm guessing that's maybe late 50s, early 60s, when it was Montgomery Ward's. Strategically located across from the LTD Eugene Station, redevelopment of the property has the potential to significantly improve the streetscape and add vibrancy and positive activity on a key block in the heart of downtown. LCC has accepted a letter of interest from the city to purchase the property, and staff are exploring the use of community development block grant funds to acquire it for redevelopment as a mixed-income residential project that includes modern income and market rate housing. CDBG funds require that 51% of the units must be affordable for those making 80% or less of area median income. This is an innovative approach for redevelopment for us and will likely involve collaboration between the city, a private developer, and an affordable housing service provider. To make the project more attractive for redevelopment, it is anticipated it will require additional investment of public dollars. Council action is required to authorize purchase, and the agency board must be consulted before use of any urban renewal funds. Staff anticipate bringing this project to council for input and direction in 2020. Kesey Square. There is the potential to invest in improvements to Kesey Square that preserve the public's access to this popular open space at the center of our downtown and facilitate more sustained positive activity at the intersection of Willamette and Broadway. Staff are actively engaged with the property owner of the adjacent Northwest Persian Rugs and Imports at 941 Willamette to identify potential tenants for the building that would bring uses that could engage the square with positive energy and vibrancy. Investment of urban renewal funds in the square could make a significant contribution to the success of adjacent uses. Staff anticipate bringing this project back to the agency board once prospective tenants have been identified and we have a better sense of how improvements to the square could contribute to their success. High-speed fiber, or UGENet. So unlike the other projects that I just gave an overview of, UGENet has actually been completed. The partnership of eWeb, LCOG, the Technology Association of Oregon, and the Urban Renewal Agency has constructed a fiber network providing affordable, high-speed internet connectivity in the core of our downtown. Staff are scheduled to provide a brief presentation on the project and its outcomes to council at the October 30th work session. And then finally, just to kind of recap all of those dates and give you a sense for what is coming down the road. Beginning with the Riverfront Urban Renewal District, we have two sessions scheduled to discuss the financial status of the Riverfront District, project costs, and financial strategies on the 28th of October, and then again on November 13th. We'll be here discussing the Town Square concept design and next steps on October 30th and providing that fiber update. Depending on the outcomes of that work session, we could see a scheduled hearing and follow-up work session on the Town Square in November or December. We'll be back with steam plant deal points on November 18th. We have a supplemental budget item in December related to quiet zone funding. And then in 2020, we'll be back to discuss the LID process and bid review. We're anticipating MUPTI applications as part of the Riverfront development. We'll be back to discuss the concept for 1059 Willamette and additional conversations on Town Square. And with that, just want to hear questions you have and what other kinds of information you'd like from us in anticipation for all those other meetings.
Wow. That's a lot of projects. So thank you for that rundown. It's a complicated schedule to keep in our heads, and it helps to have that. I have Betty lined up for a question. I'll let you open it up.
Thank you. First, I want to say a comment. I think that the old LCC building, formerly Montgomery Ward, I still think it would make a good homeless shelter. Shelter on the upper floors, a day center on the bottom floor. And lots of people have told me they think it's an ideal place. It's near the bus station, it's in the center of downtown. And it would do two things. It would help the people who need shelter, and it would help the people who don't want to see them lying on the streets or taking up the library chairs if they had a place to be. That was a comment. Now, question, what's the cost of the quiet zone, the total cost now?
Of all the quiet zones, or just the
Well,
riverfront?
both of them.
Quiet zones? You don't have the exact numbers.
Each of them, I should say, instead of both of them.
I think we'll have to.
Yeah, that's changed a little bit from the last number because the 8th Street crossing is being redesigned a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. The urban renewal component of that was
I'm afraid to throw a number out.
3-point-something million, as I
Yeah.
recall, but I don't recall what the other total cost was, but I think it was in the $7 to $10 million range, as I recall.
We can get back to you with a number.
Yeah, we'll have that level of detail when we come back at the first urban renewal work session.
I think the public needs to know what we're spending the money on, even though it's urban renewal. And one of my objections to urban renewal is it's too easy to spend it without people seeing it or helping decide. And then on the positive side, I'm glad you're talking with Mr. Imami about Kesey Square. I hope you're talking about opening the walls, which I know that he has wanted to do for a long time. Are you?
There's the potential for that, yes, depending on what the uses would be in the adjacent building.
You know, Mr. Imami, just for the public's information, owns both the buildings that abut the square. And he has wanted for a long time to open the walls. And one time almost had an agreement with Dennis Taylor, I think, and then was told it could be taken away once they did it. I don't remember the details, but I even saw the letter from Dennis Taylor at one point. So I hope that you will keep working on that and keep us informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselors with questions or comments? Claire, Alan?
Probably have more questions later that I'll think of, but I guess for all of these, for each urban renewal district, when we're coming back to discuss whatever particular project is within them, if you can provide in the AIS or at the table the details, not only of the costs of the projects we've already identified or the projected estimates, and then the current capacity of the district, so that we've got that in front of us and we're not having to try to look through our notes and remember what it is. And then I believe that we voted as Urban Renewal Board on a particular idea for the LCC building, which is different from the one being presented here. And I'm wondering if the board will need to take action if we want to actually switch visions.
So the plan is, lists housing as an option for the project. Another concept was kind of an innovation center, maker space, that kind of a use as well. So the current use isn't inconsistent with what was in the plan. We may not have talked about it at the time at the table. I think at the time there was maybe more conversation about the other vision for that.
Yeah, I don't remember us talking about housing, but
We will have, as
I
part of,
believe you.
as part of that process, we will have to, it's similar to the town square in terms of we have to share, we have to get community feedback, there's public hearing involved, so there's a number of steps we'll go
Right.
through with that concept and get feedback.
I mean, I think it's a good concept. I like the concept of workforce housing there, so I'm not objecting to that, but I'm just wanting to make sure we're got our ducks in the right rows.
Yes.
Alan?
The two questions. One, the downtown high-speed fiber service area, which is on slide 2, has a outline of the boundary of it. I've always wondered how we develop the boundary. Is it the infrastructure that eWeb has that we were able to fill out? And that's the extent of what their conduit was able to
Yes, I think,
able to use?
yeah, exactly. And once you get to a certain boundary, lines start going above ground and those kinds of things. So it's definitely was a service area that matched how we were doing the project, engineering the project through the electrical conduit. So there were some limitations once you kind of ran into a wall, so to speak, regarding it got more expensive, more complicated. You had to start digging up concrete and all those kinds of things. So.
Lines, not a nice little square
Yes.
rectangle. Claire covered my other point about the 1059 Willamette. I remember it being an innovation space, but I'm not opposed to looking at it being housing. So that's good. When we talk about the town square, when we come back and talk about that, we're going to talk about it in the context of all three parts of it, which is the park blocks, the farmer's market, and the city hall.
Yes.
And what are we going to talk about?
The first thing that we're going to talk about on the 30th is the farmers market and park blocks design concept. We've been doing a lot of community outreach. So what's come forward really is the community's vision for both the farmers market and the park blocks. And so it's a concept design at this point. What we're really hoping is for you to provide us some feedback so that we can really move it to the next step, which is let's really get into design so that we can figure out some cost estimates and then come back to you with some refined information around what's the true cost and some decision points about how we move forward. So we kind of want to take that next step is really get into the actual design and cost estimating. The city hall is a little bit further behind. We're just bringing on an architect to the team. We're still negotiating that. And so we'll also be following that 30th conversation with how the city hall really meshes into the town square. And we want to, of course, design the two together. So they're all going to always be interlinked, but the discussions will be fragmented a little bit because the town square is a little bit ahead of the city hall building.
Yeah, that was actually my concern was talking about the farmer's market and the city hall, and the city hall's a little bit behind in terms of that. And how are they going to mesh together? Because the farmer's market ends up being kind of the plaza part of the entryway to the city hall.
The team is, the important consideration is the team, the architect and the landscape architect and the owner's rep, they're working together on the town square design. So they're not going to be fragmented. It's going to be designed together. One's just a little bit ahead of the other.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing we need to talk about is the city hall funding, which will come back to us in short course.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you. That'll be fun when we get to do that. I appreciate all your hard work. I know this is very large, and the footprint of it is the entirety of our downtown. I would hope, two quick things. Number one, just kind of, I guess, commenting on something I read recently, I would say that most members of our community, I think, would assume that our efforts towards the covered market space and the market aspects of the market square have to do with making sure that we have adequate facilities, adequate capacity for that market to thrive down there, right? So my strong hope is that we're taking their input about their needs as well as possible, that we're listening very carefully to their needs and designing things that are useful to them rather than to some other design point. I would think that accommodating their needs is a pretty high priority. So I read some interesting stuff lately. I just wanted to make sure that part was said out loud. Secondarily, as a takeoff from what Alan said, of all of the things you talked about, we still have a lot of that in front of us. The one thing that's behind us, I think, has been wildly successful in the fiber. And that was something everybody loved the idea, and we did in this manner. I want to know when we expand the footprint farther. I want to know when we take that next step to Midtown, to wherever, however we decide that footprint is appropriately designed or drawn. I want to know as soon as possible, how can we take that next step? I like the idea of being Chattanooga or, some of the other communities in our country who've made this a priority as an economic issue, an economic development issue. And I absolutely think it is. And if we're smart, we're going to be pushing on this one as hard and as fast as we can. So I hope that we will see some of that coming back beyond the scope of just the Market Square and the downtown area, but how do we take that next step considerably wider on that footprint? Do you guys want to comment on any of that preliminarily?
I'll just say that the next fiber frontier is the riverfront, because the first phase did not include, because of the infrastructure, couldn't handle it. But while we're digging up the site and putting infrastructure in the ground, the fiber will expand to the riverfront. So that's the next phase. We definitely need to do some work on, it's a technical engineering question of how
Sure.
we do it.
Sure.
And then figuring out how much does that cost, and we need to do both levels of that work. I think we've started that conversation with eWeb, but we could definitely come back with some of that information.
And I would think that this is an area very ripe for public-private partnerships. There are an awful lot of people who make money in moving information around who would like our system to be as robust as possible because it's worthwhile from a business perspective for them. So I look towards those options as well when it comes to how do we fund some of the expansion of that capacity.
One of the things that staff has started to explore is it's often called smart cities, which is any numbers of technologies that are used across the city in a variety of ways. And so something like the expansion of high-speed fiber into other parts of the community beyond the districts and the riverfront may dovetail into that conversation as well. And so it could be a part of this idea of technology in a broader base that we've already started to explore.
I would think the university and their expansion also.
They'll have an interest in it. There's people that talk about innovation networks, which are any numbers of partners. We're a part of that as well with the university and the chamber and a variety of folks to think about how Eugene becomes an innovation platform for innovation, not just in economic development, but in social services, environment, and a variety of things. And so that's a part of that same conversation. So.
But I would think there's enough money running around the university and infrastructure. Those with large grand plans that perhaps affording it may not be too challenging. Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
Thank you. Very helpful. In the next discussion, I think the things that will be helpful for me, because what I'm going to be looking at is juggling elements to try to cobble together from a policy standpoint what works. And so, as I remember mentioning in the SDC discussion earlier, for me the three linchpins are the need, the capacity, and the timeline. Specifically on the need, we set a set of 6 needs when we reauthorized it, two or 3 years ago. And I think it would be nice to revisit that need again, those projects and how that need is still relevant 2-3 years later. because it was relevant at that time. I want to make sure we're still aligning, and so that to me would be helpful. Because as we mentioned, for example, with the LCC building, we had a vision 2 or 3 years ago, but that's changed. And so how might our vision, the need, adapt to where we are right now? The second element, which is the capacity, that is what can the urban renewal do as opposed to other ways of financing the need. We have had a lot of conversation about whether or not urban renewal districts are good or bad, whether they should last for a certain amount of time, whether they should be extended, what you should do with them. And the other element is, if you're not going to extend an urban renewal district, what is the capacity for increasing the indebtedness within the same timeline? In other words, I need to know what the variables are for an urban renewal district. You can make it longer, you can make it bigger. You know, what options do we have? And another part of that capacity conversation is, if you identify a need, if you identify a set of projects that we really do want to do, whether it's this one or add-ons or whatever, and urban renewal is one way to do it, either by timeline or by capacity, what other ways could you do it that don't involve increasing taxes? Because the urban renewal district reapportions taxes but doesn't increase them. And so are there other ways that you could finance a project that didn't involve increasing taxes? What are the options? What other options might there be? Public or private options? And then the third one, which is the timeline, gets at, how soon do these things need to be done? I know when you work with private partners, they work under certain timelines. They have certain constraints on them that may not necessarily be constraints on government. How can you phase a project or time a project so that you can meet the needs of your partners and also meet the needs of the government as well, whether that timeline may impact the capacity conversation? You may be able to take the timeline and spread it out, make it go longer so that the capacity from a size standpoint goes down. I need to know what all those variables are, because if I want to have a meaningful conversation, I need to know what those variables are so that I can try to evaluate how you put them together in an effective formula.
Okay, I have Claire and Alan for second round.
So I just wanted to second what Councilor Clark said about the fiber build out. I'm also very eager for us to build that out. And while I'm not surprised that you say riverfront's the most logical next step in terms of ease and affordability, that place is getting a lot of attention. And there are other parts of our community that need attention. And there are residents in this community, not just businesses, but residents who need to benefit from this build out. So I can support us moving it there, but not at the expense of moving it other places. So I'm really going to encourage you to try to bring back some options for us to look at how we might further build out beyond the footprint that it is now. Because when we voted for that those many years ago, the riverfront was a distant vision, and really what I had in mind was the idea that we start downtown and then we continue to move out so that more and more folks in the city benefit. And we're creating a new neighborhood, and it's going to get a lot of attention and a lot of goodies, and we need to be equitable in how we think about where we're bringing that added benefit to our community.
Alan.
Yeah, that's a good point, Claire. When I was talking about the blue line that makes the outline of the high-speed fiber service area, is all of that area served by high-speed fiber within that blue line?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know. Ann will be here again for an update. Ann Fifield will be here and give you an update. She can tell you how many buildings have connected. So the capacity for a building to hook into the system is there throughout the entire area. But buildings have to individually choose to basically connect into the backbone of the fiber that's been laid out. So yes, the capacity is there, but every building hasn't chosen to be part of the network.
Right. And well, I have envisioned this as a hub and spoke kind of system eventually. The reason we did this initial part is because of the infrastructure that UWEB had that was easy to put into the conduit, the high-speed fiber, and so that has limitations. Once we get beyond that, then it becomes an infrastructure problem that is overcome by adding more dollars to it. And so it becomes more expensive to do the spokes. And it's not just simple to go out and run a high-speed fiber line because it's a difficult undertaking. So, because it needs to have its own conduit going through the right-of-way.
And I would just add, the expense of using it goes up as the cost of installing it goes up. So one of the things that's magic about our downtown is because the cost of putting the fiber in the ground was so economical, the service actually is really, really affordable for the folks downtown. It'd be nice to be able to replicate that citywide. I'm not sure how we get there, but we can bring some information. So
Because the cost of putting it in is
it's
higher.
just, it could be a
on the
lot,
spokes.
depending, yeah, and I'm not the technical expert, but that would be an interesting question of how the cost of installing it really results in the cost of the service and so forth, so.
Yeah, well, and I was always hoping that eventually technology would help us out here somehow and over time reduce those costs as we move forward. Last question is the second to last slide with the high-speed fiber picture. They're pointing to something up there. And that's the speed, but I can't read it in this little thing.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
that's when the fiber, it was originally lit up the first day. And so people were standing by to see how fast the speed was, and it was radical. It was really, really good.
Good speeds.
I was there that day.
What are the numbers in 84 and 948? That's download and up.
Yeah, it's the outgoing speed and the incoming speed, and I'm not the technical expert, but I'm gonna make sure Ann has that picture when she comes, and she can explain it all to you.
She's saying, what is it, Amy?
Download and upload speed just under a gigabit.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
very
a
fast.
Gigabit is the metric.
No, gigabit is 1,000,
Right, 1,000 megabytes.
so they're at 800.
That's very fast.
That's very fast. That's faster than getting to my house. That's good. Okay, that's why we're able to, because the fiber network has been such an economic boon to downtown, and the whole infrastructure has created a lot of jobs in the high-tech industry. And, you know, the one example of the one company that was doing download dailies from LA that could only do a certain number of jobs because of the download speed was able to add, instead of 3 jobs or 4 jobs, it was like 12 jobs because they could then have the throughput to be able to do it on a daily basis because it's so much faster. And it's that kind of future-looking stuff that was really intriguing to me in the promise of the high-speed fiber network.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree that downtown has succeeded as an economic development and job creation idea. I think it's in horrible shape for a number of other reasons, but that's for another day. But from an economic perspective and a physical infrastructure perspective, downtown's done amazingly well, and it's largely due to a lot of this, as well as the work of so many others. But I've said this a long time when we first started talking about fiber, too, that, you know, what made for a great city in the United States in the late 17th, early 18th century was the cities that were built on waterways. That's where cities succeeded, right, economically. And in the, 19th century, the cities that were built up around railroad lines were the ones that were wildly successful. And in the 50s, it's on the interstate highway system, and this is tomorrow. And I'd like to say, let's leverage this tool beyond where should that footprint be for equity and for as many other issues as there are that are important in our community. And I agree with Claire about that. Why don't we leverage this tool to say what parts of our town, if we had, the ability to wave and say that's where it should go, would they be? And I'd suggest to you that up 6th and 7th and out 99 in that corridor is the perfect place for us to do that, to utilize a massively underdeveloped land. And it's the place we've pointed to as if we're going to do another urban renewal, a district type area, or any sort of incentives, that it should go 6th and 7th and up 99. And it's the perfect place for us to focus on this. You probably already have. But that's going to alter how land is thought up those areas that are dramatically underutilized in our community, both from a housing perspective, up and down transportation, major transportation corridors, but also the real estate and how it's used for industry and for businesses. I think it's the perfect corridor we have to focus on next for taking and giving it an infrastructure advantage over other places. So I hope we're going to hear more about that.
I actually want to piggyback on that comment of Mike's. We are going to be talking about transit corridors, we're talking about improvements in roads, we have a transportation system plan, and I guess I'm just wondering, to what extent can our thinking about fiber installation be aligned with those road improvements, since we're going to be digging things up? And maybe you're already having those conversations, or we have that conversation, and it might actually influence some of our other thinking. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, just piggybacking on these two, I was given the book Fiber, which is making the rounds with the high-tech folks. And in the opening chapters, it talks about South Korea's investment in fiber ahead of their Olympic Games. And they have developed a capacity to install high-speed fiber very quickly and relatively inexpensively. And they actually have trenching machines that can go along a street, little trench this wide, this deep, drop in the cable, the fiber, bury it over and keep going. And so I think to that point, if we're creative and we have the will, I think we can make fiber happen. South Korea's made it happen. Other countries have made it happen because they believe it's important enough. Back to the need again. They felt that need was strong enough. I feel that need is strong enough. I will echo everything that is said. It is the future. It's the superhighway of the 21st century, and I think whatever we need to look at in terms of technology to allow us to do that is a good investment of time and money. So along transportation corridors, but there's other ways you can do it. And I'm not going to make the direct link now, although it sounds like I am. If you run fiber to people's homes, you don't have to have 5G. You run fiber to their homes, and that's what one of the considerations is. And so it's an alternative technology that is actually more reliable because it's underground and it's always there.
Yeah.
Okay, that was exciting.
What he said.
Any other comments or questions about this? All right, well, we are early, and thank you. Oh, did you have a comment? Okay,
Can we
yes,
do
go
some
for it,
of the
Ellen.
other stuff that's on our
Yes, let me just close up this one. Thank you very, very much. That was great and food for thought, and we'll be seeing a lot of you, it sounds like, over the coming weeks and months. Yes, I need to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency. I can reopen the city council meeting, and we could look at the consent calendar, yes.
So moved.
That's you.
Yeah, you-
That's you.
We have to make a move for that.
Yes.
Yeah, uh-huh.
You want to move the consent calendar?
Oh, we're going to do the consent. Okay, I
Yeah.
move the approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
No,
No, oh, you have a
No.
comment. Oh, you want to pull something. Okay, sorry.
You got to be
Claire,
fast
go
at this
for it.
table.
I was trying.
I know, she was trying, but I was moving.
I have additional material
Oh.
for the
Oh,
consent
okay.
calendar, regarding city manager's employment
Oh,
agreement.
right.
Right.
So I don't know if I want to pass that out really quick.
Yes, you do.
Wah,
Yes, you do.
wah.
Yep, hand it out.
Yep. That's right. I actually knew that was coming.
I got to get my glasses out again.
That was not why I had my hand raised.
Okay.
So I was looking through the minutes, and on the September 16th meeting, on page 4 of those meeting minutes, it indicates that I seconded Counselor Evans' motion to table the motion on flag lots. I could be wrong. It was
You didn't second.
It was quite a meeting, and so I could be wrong, but I voted against the motion. I don't believe I seconded the motion, and so I'd like to pull this date's minutes and ask staff to go back and confirm who actually seconded that motion, because I don't think it was me.
Oh,
That's fun, that's good.
that's good. Let's
think it
pull
might have
that
been me.
date out of the minutes.
Don't know how they would confuse the two of us, but okay.
Well, there's a whole long list for that.
That's pulling attachment D.
That's
Correct.
polling attachment D.
This is awesome, by the way.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Students get the benefit.
That was my only
And that's your correction. And but we now also have this
addition.
addition.
So right, so just for clarity, it's, the agenda item, a consent item is 2A, attachment D is what just got pulled, not all of it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of letters, so I
Because
just,
it's the 16th,
yeah.
Yeah, the September 16th,
16th work session.
correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And this just clarifies C.
Yes.
This clarifies C.
And so,
This
that
blue thing
was,
here?
it was an addition to, after your council packet had been sent out, this was added as a way to address the requested motion for an amendment.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, the question is on that item where it says, allows him to continue teaching classes at the U of O and allows him to undertake similar types of employment. This, similar types of employment refers to teaching classes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Not to similar type of employment as a city manager.
Correct. And that, the second more broad category of similar types would require consent of the council president.
Right.
So, yes, but yes, you're correct.
Okay, Mike?
I'm voting in favor because I'm going to audit the class. I can't wait. That'll be fun.
They don't have to end.
In all seriousness, the students are all very lucky to have you speak to them, and if we can help make that a reality, they'll be better communities and smarter people as a result, so I'm all for it.
Okay, so the consent calendar has one item pulled, this item explained. Are we ready to vote on it? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excellent. That's well done. I don't think we have anything else that we want to do before the forum.
Round of cards, anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Forum want to see us do.
Yeah, okay, so we are now adjourned. Go eat peace.